in, everybody, to a little bit of a bonus edition, a best of edition of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody is getting ready for an awesome July 4th weekend. Hope you're spending time with friends, family, loved ones. You're getting away. But I also, let me say this. I know that a lot of you are not getting away. I know that a lot of you are working. You're not with family. You can't get away. And so what I wanted to do was give a little piece of bonus content for the weekend. So around Memorial Day, we did a couple of these, the best of the Aaron Torres pod, where we basically looked at an individual team in college hoops and basically said, okay, let's go through the entire spring from the first commitment they got to the last, and let's just put together all the clips, piece them together, and let's talk about these teams. So we did it for Kentucky. We did it for UConn, a couple others. Today, it's going to be the Arkansas Razorbacks. And what is fun about this is going back and listening to some of the reaction that I have. So these are all the clips from the spring, basically, of everything that happened with Arkansas, starting with Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle committing, DJ Wagner, Trevin Brazil, all those guys announcing they were coming back, Carter Knox, to most recently the two international prospects. And basically what we do, we clip them all together. You get my reactions in real time, and you get to see how this roster that I believe is a team that is good enough to compete for an SEC title and a team that is good enough to compete for maybe that elusive Final Four berth, how it all came together. So these are best of clips from the spring, talking transfers, talking this, talking that, and I think you will enjoy it. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. I mean, look, it's July 3rd, and I'm still giving you content. I mean, what more could you ask for from your boy Torres? So make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to rate and review the podcast if you listen on Apple or Spotify, because we really do appreciate your support. Speaking of support, you know who else's support we appreciate? How about our friends? How about our partners? How about Callie Puffs and CalliePuffs.com? Okay, so I've told you Callie Puff's story. Great story, family-owned company, not far from where I live. Just good people that make a heck of a product, okay? So it's that time of year. It's the summer officially. Hopefully this weekend you're on a boat, you're on a beach, you're at a pool. But when you have your shirt off, you don't want to be a filthy, disgusting slob, do you? That's not what you want. Instead, what you want is a snack that is healthy but delicious. That's Callie Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But the best part is they taste delicious. For more information, go to CalliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, CalliePuffs.com. You can also find them on Amazon.com. And I just mentioned this over the last couple days, but Callie Puffs has actually given listeners of the Aaron Torres pod a very special offer. So this is really cool, is that basically you guys as an audience have been so awesome that Callie Puff said, you know what? We got to give listeners of the Torres pod a special deal. So this is the deal. All you got to do, it's only at CalliePuffs.com. Go to CalliePuffs.com, CAULIPUFFS.com, CalliePuffs.com. When you get there, once you make your purchase at checkout, if you use promo code Torres, you can get 15% off the total purchase. You buy one bag, you buy 100 bags, you can get 15% off with the promo code Torres. So we appreciate Callie Puffs. We appreciate your support. Now let's get to the best of Arkansas Razorbacks, looking at all the big moves in real time that John Calipari made, transfers, returnees, freshmen, and more. It's time to dive into some college hoops transfer portal conversation. Why is that? It's because it has been an insane, just an absurd couple days in the transfer portal just since we last talked on Sunday night. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first story that I want to go ahead and get to, it's interesting. Following the portal on a day in, day out basis, it's been fascinating to see all these teams are making big moves. You know, UCLA got Donovan Dent a million years ago, and this school got that guy, and this school's taken 4 different players, and what does it mean? And then there's the Arkansas Razorbacks. It's been a quiet couple weeks for Arkansas outside of kind of, bad news, or not surprisingly news that doesn't, news that isn't necessarily bad, but, doesn't really help your 2025, 2026 roster. Because since the season ended, the only 3 pieces of news we've gotten are pretty straightforward. Big Z entering the transfer portal, already committed to play at Illinois with his brother. Also, on top of it, you have You have Adu Thero declaring for the draft. You have Boogie Flan declaring for the draft. And as of Tuesday morning, April 15th, there had been zero transactions in a positive direction for Arkansas. No players announcing they're returning, no players committing out of the portal, and basically the only thing that you knew, you have 4 freshmen committed for next year, headlined by Malik Thomas and Darius Acuff, the 2 McDonald's All-Americans. So that was the story coming into today. And if that was the story coming out of today, we certainly would have had a different conversation. But I'll tell you what, this guy right here, once he gets on a roll, he ain't slowing down, because on Tuesday, Arkansas got not 1, but 2 different portal commits. As earlier in the day, Nick Pringle, forward, South Carolina, commits to the University of Arkansas. And then, oh, by the way, just a couple minutes ago, right before he went on air, Malik Ewan, the second leading scorer and leading rebounder at Florida State, he also commits to Arkansas. And so with it, you know what I got to ask, baby. I just got one question for you people, and that question is this. Can anything stop the Big Pig invasion? Can anything stop the Big Pig invasion? Arkansas 2 commits. By the way, if you want your Big Pig invasion tee, you already know what you got to do. You got to go to AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. With that said, though, let's go ahead and dive into our boy, Coach Cal, because he made his moves on Tuesday, and we got to discuss, okay? So first of all, Nick Pringle. Let's talk a little bit about him. Nick Pringle, 6'10", forward, has plenty of SEC experience. Began his career at Wofford, then went to Bama for 2 years, was at South Carolina last year. And basically the bottom line is, I'll be real. Take out Malik Ewan for half a second, okay? Independent of Malik Ewan, Nick Pringle is exactly what Arkansas needs, we believe. As I said, we know that there's 2 5-star guards coming in. We'll talk about who could be coming back on the wing. Wink Carter Knox, wink Billy Richmond, maybe in the backcourt, wink DJ Wagner. We'll get back to them in a minute. I apologize that my winking is so terrible, but I just bring it up because at the end of the day, the backcourt in theory could be in good shape. The wing in theory could be in good shape. The front court, though, needed some work, and they needed some toughness and some physicality, okay? We all know how Arkansas' season ended. We don't have to relive it, relitigate it, whatever. But what we know is that in the Sweet 16, Arkansas kind of got punked on the boards. Texas Tech had, about 18 offensive rebounds? Something crazy like that. I can't remember all the details. I'm getting old. All these stories and stuff run together. But Texas Tech kind of bullied them on the glass and kind of bullied them on the offensive glass specifically. And so in that game, I'm going to look it up right now because it's going to kill me if I forget. Let's see here. At Texas Tech, I hate to do it, but they out-rebounded Arkansas by 12. They had a grand total of 22 offensive rebounds. And so the one thing I can tell you about Cal is this. I've been following Cal's career since UMass, but certainly been covering it kind of on an almost day-to-day basis since he got to Kentucky 15 years ago. One thing I can tell you about Cal, if something, I think this is most coaches, but if something costs his team a chance at a title, he's going to make sure that gets fixed in the offseason. But then 2, the one thing I can tell you about Cal definitively, and I was told this years ago by people who covered Kentucky, the one thing Cal does not tolerate, you cannot be soft. You can be a lot of things. You can be mean. You can be this. I'm not going to start naming negative traits, okay? But the one thing you can't be when you step between those sidelines, you better not be soft or Cal has no patience for you. So with the way the season ended, you knew they were going to go get some toughness in the paint. And first off, they get it with Nick Pringle. 9.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. I don't think it's a coincidence that one of his best games, ironically, came in that Arkansas game against South Carolina, when, if you remember, that was the game that Arkansas had, 14, 15 points at the half. This was late in the regular season. And Pringle balled out in that game. 18 points, 9 rebounds in that game. He also had 16 and 14 in the regular season finale against Tennessee. Finished overall with double figures in scoring in 5 of South Carolina's last 9 games. And so sometimes the great thing about the portal, you get an older player, there's no secrets or confusion about what you're getting or what you're expecting when you're bringing in a player. This isn't an 18-year-old kid. This isn't he wants to get a rebound and take the ball 94 feet up the floor, wants to shoot a bunch of threes. No, this is a kid that in 4 years of college basketball has shot a grand total of 3 3-point attempts. Went 0 for 3 this year on those 3-point attempts, okay? And so I just bring it up because not everything is for everybody. And the one thing about Cal, he doesn't care if you're a big guy that doesn't shoot a lot, he wants his big guys in the paint, rebounding, being physical, being tough, being mean. So Nick Pringle delivers that. And then I'll take it a step further. I think Malik Ewan delivers that in spades. Okay, so Malik Ewan, it's so funny. First of all, both these guys have been on commit watch for probably about 2 weeks now. I mean, I remember getting a tip at the Final Four. Oh, Malik Ewan could commit any day now. Yeah, that was 2 weeks ago, okay? But I only bring it up because Malik Ewan, I'll be real, kind of didn't watch a ton of Florida State this year. Just, it's whatever, right? They were bad. They were uninteresting. They didn't win a lot. But the one thing about Florida State under the previous head coach, Leonard Hamilton, they valued size, they valued athleticism, and they valued toughness. When Florida State had things going, think about all those crazy athletic guys that they had on that roster. They had, Scotty Barnes, and Patrick Williams was a top 5 pick, and Devin Vassell. I mean, these are all guys, crazy athletic, big wingspans, defensive whiz, whatever. And I think that's a little bit about what you get with Malik Ewan. 6'11", 230 pounds. So he is definitely the Jonas Adu replacement. And he averaged 14 points and 7.5 rebounds per game this past season at Florida State. Thing about this kid, much like Nick Pringle, he ain't a three-point shooter. And again, not everybody has to shoot 42% from three. It's okay. As long as you know that that's what you're getting, and as long as the coaching staff has expressed, hey, we don't even want you to shoot threes, that can actually be a very good thing if you're a head coach and a player, as long as that relationship is there. And so this news isn't surprising. Both of these players have been on commit watch for weeks at a time, to the point that I think my poor buddy John Neighbors was about to go gray with just waiting for any news to come down. I should mention, after Nick Pringle committed, I saw this, Tyler Ulis tweeting out, boom, ×2, meaning that Tyler Ulis was expecting a second commitment. And so I just bring it up because this was expected. This was important, to say the least. And now all of a sudden, Arkansas goes from a team that has a bunch of questions to one that might not, depending on how the rest of the offseason goes. Now, the big thing for Arkansas right now, and this was one of the reasons why I kind of felt like, I don't want to say Arkansas fans shouldn't worry, because every fan base, I know how fans are. You're allowed to worry and be concerned. But I just bring it up because if you're Arkansas, and I was saying this all along, is that the most important recruiting that John Calipari was going to do is now to retain the players that were already on your roster. I'm not saying any of them are coming back. What I am saying is, the bottom line is, if you're Calipari, the key was never you had to find 7 players in the portal, right? I thought that was such a misrepresentation of Arkansas coming out of the season. I saw, even on Monday night, they missed on the Jaron Pierre kid who ended up committing to SMU, and people are like, oh, Cal can't recruit the portal. I'm like, didn't he just get Nelly Davis and Jonas Adu last year on top of DJ Wagner, on top of Big Z, on top of Adu Thero? First of all, he recruited a first-round pick out of the portal. His name was Adu Thero. Now, he happened to follow him from Kentucky. But I only bring it up because I never really bought the idea that Cal can't recruit the portal. It was more, they just didn't have a lot of needs, and the biggest recruiting that Cal can do is bring back the guys from last year's team. To me, listen, this is another one. I think we're going to start getting answers on what this team looks like in the coming days. As I said, you have 4 players committed in the class of 2024. Malik Thomas, Darius Acuff, 2 guards in the backcourt, plus Isaiah Sealy, kind of a projectable player out of the state of Arkansas. Then you have the big guy from overseas. Well, now you have two big guys in Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle. And I think, to me, the big question is, who are you going to get back from this past season? Because to me, the most important recruiting you're going to do now is retaining some guys on this roster. To me, I'll be real. Some Arkansas fans may disagree. I still think the X factor, and there's 3 of them really, but I think one of the most important players is DJ Wagner. Listen, I know I've been a little bit of a DJ stan, but I think by the end of the year, you saw the value that he had as a guard in college basketball. Now, I want to be clear, since every time I say something, if things don't go that way, I get crushed in the comments. We'll get to Lamar Wilkerson in a minute, okay? As of right now, it feels very 50-50 if DJ Wagner is going to be back or not. Every day, it's some days you feel like he's going to leave. Some days you feel like he's not. Some days you feel like he's going to go pro. Some days you feel like he's going to hit the portal, whatever. Whatever DJ decides is not up to me. But to me, if I was Cal, that's the guy that I want back because you need veteran guards in college basketball. Here's the other thing, too. A lot of these teams in the SEC are having to replace a ton off last year's team. Auburn's going to basically have a whole new roster. Tennessee's going to have a whole new roster. Ole Miss is going to have a whole new roster. Florida's going to have an entirely new backcourt. If you can bring back DJ Wagner as a third-year SEC player, I love that situation. But I also know that from DJ's perspective, he's sitting there saying, well, wait a second. Now you have 2 5-star freshman guards. Is there going to be a spot for me? Am I going to have the ball? Am I going to play off the ball? Am I going to be a third guy? Am I coming off the bench? So obviously, that needs to be decided behind the scenes. I am not speculating on whether he does come back or not. I am just saying that for me, that would be my personal number one priority. Number two, listen, Carter Knox. Carter Knox was a dog late in the season. 20 points against Texas Tech in the Sweet 16, 15 against St. John's in the round of 32. And he's a guy, listen, we talked about this the day after the season ended. He's the kind of guy that could come back, be that, late second round pick this year. And all of a sudden, boom, he becomes like a top 10 pick a year from now. 6'6", shot the 3 ball pretty well at 35%. And he was just a very confident player going into the final few games of the season. You get him back with an offseason. You get him back with confidence going into 25, 26. Yeah, that's a dog, and that is a guy that everybody has to be on alert for. Billy Richmond, you guys know I love Billy Richmond, soft spot for Billy Richmond. I've said it a million times. He reminds me, I told my buddy Matt Jones, the former Arkansas football and basketball player who hosts with Phil Elson. I said, Billy Richmond kind of reminds me of the kid at football, the kid that played on everybody's high school football team. It was like his first day at practice, and he didn't really know what he was doing, but he was going a million miles an hour, and sometimes he's running through the wrong gap, and sometimes he's missing tackles, and sometimes he's blowing up plays 10 yards in the backfield, but the effort is never questioned. That's Billy Richmond. 16 points in that win over St. John's. They don't beat St. John's to go to the Sweet 16 without Billy Richmond. I would like him back, and then I think, to me, as much of an X factor as anybody is of course Trevin Brazile. Listen, Trevin Brazile is awesome. And I've referenced this a few times. I know it was an up and down year for him, but I thought Jay Billis, who I can be critical of Jay Billis, if you watch the games, because Trevin only averaged about 7 points, 5 boards. If you watch the games, though, late in the season, remember, and by the way, I see the Indiana fans starting to infiltrate the chat. We're going to get to them in a minute. But I only bring it up because Trevin Brazile, late in the year, we talked about this, is that with Trevin Brazile, Jay Billis said this during one of the broadcasts. I think it was in the SEC tournament. He said, sometimes you need to be needed. And Trevin Brazile was a player that early on in the season was kind of buried behind Adu Thero, buried behind even Jonas Adu, trying to find his role. You couldn't really figure it out. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the year, he was one of the best players on the team. 11 points and 12 boards against Kansas in round 1, 11-5 against Texas Tech, 8-8 against St. John's. And, oh, by the way, 15-11 against Ole Miss in the SEC tournament, that loss at the buzzer. So to me, Arkansas, a huge day. But now is the fun part. Now is the interesting part. Now you have the front court pieces in place. You have the 2 stars, or you have the 2 big guys in place. You have the 2 star freshmen in place. I think you need the vets back. I think you need that retention. You look at the teams that had success this year. Auburn retention, Florida retention. The news that literally happened about 5 minutes after we went off air on Thursday. And I'll tell you, this is about as long as you're ever going to have to wait for Torres to talk about a topic. We could not record on Thursday night. I had family in town. We were going to do it Sunday. We did not do a show Sunday because of the holiday. So let's go ahead and dive into the roster that John Calipari is going to roll out because, they had some big news on Thursday that we need to discuss. And if you listen to Thursday evening show, what did we spend the first 20 or 25 minutes talking about? We said, look, Calipari made some portal additions early last week. Malik Ewan from Florida State, Nick Pringle from South Carolina. Like them, they're role players. They aren't guys that are going to define Arkansas' season in 2025, 2026. And what I said at the time was there were 4 players that, in theory, had eligibility and could come back, and Arkansas's season next year was going to be defined by if those 4 decided to come back: DJ Wagner, Carter Knox, Billy Richmond, and Trevin Brazile. Well, before we got off air, Carter Knox did announce that he was going to test the NBA draft waters, leave the process open. But we went off air wondering what the future of all 3 was. Unfortunately, about 2 minutes after, I'm not even kidding, it was under 10 minutes after we got off air. Like, it was staggering how wild the time frame was. But less than 5 minutes, 10 minutes after we get off air, the other 3 did make their official announcements in a video released by John Calipari on social. Producer Matt has that video. Producer Matt, tell everybody what they missed on Thursday afternoon.
With the team. And there is a team this year. So let me go over some of the roster. What we're doing, who's going to be here. Not quite finished, but I'm feeling really good about this group.
What's up, Hog Nation? Let's run it back. I'm all in.
Yo, what's good, Razorback Nation? It's TB. Just want to say I'm excited to come back and do another year on the hill. Whoopee.
I'm all in, Razorback Nation. Year 2. Let's do it.
What up, though, Hog Nation? Darius A-Cup here. Just here to let y'all know I'm all in, man. Let's do it.
I just wanted to give a huge shout out to all my Arkansas fans. And I really just wanted to let y'all know, Hog Nation, I'm all in.
Hog Nation, I'm all in. Let's do it.
Hello, Hog Nation. I'm all in.
And on top of that, you read today, Carter is testing the waters, which I fully agree with. That being said,
So there you have it. Just minutes after we went off air, DJ Wagner is back. Trevin Brazile is back. Billy Richmond is back. Carter Knox testing the NBA draft waters. By the way, we know about the portal additions and the 4-man recruiting class. And so with it, I really have 2 questions. One, is this the best team in the SEC coming into next season? Yeah, we're going to discuss that momentarily. But before we get to that, I do have another question. And that question is very simple. Can anything stop the Big Pig invasion, baby? That is right. Can anything stop the Big Pig invasion? I'll tell you what, we have sold out of our stock, but you can get your orders in. AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. My t-shirt guy already has another order coming because it is so exciting. It is that time of year. And like I said, is this the best team in the SEC? I think on paper it is. Let's go ahead and dive in. By the way, as always, Torres on the Hogs for your late-breaking Arkansas news. So a couple things stand out about that video. First of all, I love the top. If you remember, it was right around this time last year, John Calipari officially announces the Arkansas head coach. His first press conference with the media says, and this is an all-time line, I loved it. He says, went to meet with the team. There was no team. And so basically, of course, when Eric Musselman left, everybody entered the portal. So he opens that video with the statement of, yeah, we have a team this year, and I'm really excited about it. So I love that callback to his opening press conference. But really, let's go ahead and dive in, because to me, this is a best-case scenario. All the guys you wanted are back, and you retained everybody in the high school recruiting class. And I want to go ahead and actually, you know what? I want to start there. By the way, we got a little headphone situation going on here, so forgive me. I apologize, but we'll keep going. But really, so let's talk Arkansas, okay? Because we're going to get into best SEC, whatever. But to me, you know what was actually the biggest thing that stood out to me watching that video? It is that in an off season where everybody is losing guys everywhere, and it's not a knock on this school or that school or whatever, but think about the last couple days. Denzel Aberdeen, one of the best players off of a national championship team at Florida, about to be a starter, enters the portal. Caden Lewis was going to have a big role at Kentucky, decides not to go to Kentucky. This school loses this guy. That school loses that guy. Chad Baker-Bizarro was set to come back to Auburn. He does not come back. That's the biggest thing that stands out. In this kind of offseason, Calipari's bringing back everybody. The 3 guys that we know are coming back, they all had opportunities. to leave. They are coming back. And I think this is important as well, the 4-man freshman class. It would have been easy for Malik Thomas or Darius Acuff Jr., two guards that were expecting to play big minutes, to worry about DJ Wagner's back. What does it mean? What does it mean for my opportunities? Am I going to play as much? They could have easily looked at other options. Instead, they are coming back as well. Now let's dive into this team, because to me, it's the best team on paper in the SEC going into next year. By the way, I'll update my way too early top 25 later this week. I updated, I think, Thursday or Friday of last week. It's already outdated. But when I look at this team, a couple things. First of all, I think the backcourt is elite, okay? DJ Wagner, you guys and girls know I'm a fan. You might feel differently. You might like him. You might not like him, whatever. Okay, I get it. But at the end of the day, what I see is this: a third-year point guard in the SEC, and I believe a guy that was playing his best basketball at the end of last season. Okay, we've talked about it time and time again. I know the stats don't blow you away. 11 points, 3.5 assists. But remember, he wasn't even playing on the ball for the first probably 40% of the season before Boogie Flan gets hurt. But then late in the year, when Arkansas needed a superstar, this was the guy, that stepped up. You go to that big win at Rupp Arena that started everything. 17 points, 8 assists in that game. 17 points, 5 assists in a near win at Auburn. Obviously, the game against Mississippi State late in the season that essentially clinched an SEC tournament bid. 24 points, 3 of 4 from behind the three-point arc. 13 points and 6 assists in the SEC tournament. 14 points and 6 assists against Kansas in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. And even though things didn't go as planned against Texas Tech, did have 13 points in that game as well. So to me, first of all, that's the first important part, is the fact that you now have a veteran point guard in college basketball in 2026 in the SEC. I find it interesting, by the way, in an offseason in which Tennessee is basically losing everybody. Auburn is starting from scratch. Florida is starting from scratch. Ole Miss is starting from scratch. Kentucky is returning some, but obviously replacing a lot. John Calipari all of a sudden becomes Mr. Retention, headlined by DJ Wagner. Beyond that, and by the way, I'd say this about DJ. If DJ had wanted to enter the portal, I promise you he would have had options. Veteran point guard, from the tri-state area. I'm here to tell you there were a couple Big East schools that were hoping that kid was going to enter the portal, but he ends up coming back. Beyond that, Billy Richmond, a guy we've talked about a lot. I keep using the analogy. He's like the middle linebacker that, doesn't really know the plays, but he goes hard every play, and sometimes he makes a tackle 8 yards in the backfield, and sometimes he runs into the wrong hole, but darn it, does he play hard? That's a kid that I think is going to make a leap as a sophomore, and another one who played his best basketball late in the season. 16 points, 9 rebounds against St. John's in the NCAA tournament. Arkansas doesn't go to the Sweet 16 without him. Trevin Brazile. I'm here to tell you, Trevin Brazile, if he had entered the portal, would have had plenty of options. I know that statistically the numbers don't stand out, but if you watched Arkansas late in the year, 15 points and 11 boards against Ole Miss in the SEC tournament, 11 points and 12 rebounds against Kansas, 11 points and 5 boards against Texas Tech. You add those guys in with the 2 veterans that you added in the front court, Nick Pringle and Malik Ewan. We talked about that last week. Oh, who cares? They're a bunch of role players. You didn't need superstars in the portal. It's actually a great thing because you can't add too much more. And then I'll tell you this. I am so excited about the 2 freshmen that are coming in with Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas. Did you watch Darius Acuff in the Nike Hoops Summit a few nights ago? 22 points in that game. What do you have? 7, 8 assists. Looked every bit. Listen, DeBansa and Darren Peterson are going 1 and 2 in the next year's draft, okay? If Nate Amen, who finally committed, if things go well, he could be a top 5 pick. Some of these guys that could return, like a Carter Knox, could go high. I'm here to tell you, Darius Acuff is going to be one of the top 10 players off the board next year. He is going to be Arkansas's best NBA prospect, and I think he is going to be a huge addition alongside DJ Wagner. Malik Thomas is going to be really good as well. And so I just bring it up because I asked the question to lead the segment. Is this the best team in the SEC? And yes, I believe they are. Now, again, games have to be played. You have to figure things out. You have to figure out rotations. By the way, the other thing I'd say, we don't know about Carter Knox coming back. I do still think Carter Knox, by the way, is an important piece to what they want to do in 2025, 2026. They do need wing scoring. They do need defense on the wing. But what I would also say is you go back to what we've discussed throughout the offseason is that that's a kid that if he doesn't get some type of great guarantee in the draft process, then guess what? He comes back and he's potentially an All-American. He's potentially a top 15 pick in the 2025-2026 NBA draft or 2026 NBA draft, excuse me. Because again, if you look at what he did, if you look at the impact that he had late in the season, we've talked a lot about him. He showed up in a big way against Texas Tech in the NCAA tournament. 20.6 boards, 15 points against St. John's, 14 points against Ole Miss in the SEC tournament. But you start to look at adding him. Tell me what this team's weakness is. Now, you probably have to add a little bit of shooting, and we'll get to that in a minute. But all of a sudden, you look around. You have size. You have athleticism. You have role players in the front court. You have 3 guards that can get you probably 20 to 25 on any given night. You have a wing in Carter Knox, which could be a top 10 pick. You have Billy Richmond, who I think is going to be a much improved, confident player in year 2 in the SEC. They have experience. They have retention, which, again, I think is important. You know, I saw a stat from Evan Mia from evanmia.com who said something to the effect of, Florida's retention was quietly among the best in college basketball last year. And we don't think about these kind of things in April. We get so excited about the portal and this 5 stars going there. Having guys who have been there, who have done it, who understand expectations, I think that is a huge part of what you need in this world in college basketball. And so I could go on, but I really do believe this is the best roster. Headlined by the 3 returnees, DJ Wagner, Billy Richmond, Trevin Brazile. Love the 2 5-star guards, Malik Thomas, Darius Acuff, and a couple other things that are worth mentioning. One, I think it's important to note, when I talk about the best team in the SEC, again, we'll figure out who the best teams are when the games get played in January, February, March. But at the same time, like I said, I think it's an important note. The SEC, it's always going to be good in the NIL portal era. But this past year might have been the peak of what it can be. It's just hard to imagine it being better in a world where we don't have 5th and 6th year seniors with that COVID year of eligibility. Again, Tennessee rebuilding its roster almost completely from scratch. Auburn rebuilding its roster almost completely from scratch, especially now that we know that Chad Baker-Mazara almost certainly isn't going to be back. Ole Miss rebuilding from scratch. Florida rebuilding from scratch. I was thinking about this. Outside of Kentucky, who I think is going to be improved, outside of Arkansas, because this is an Arkansas segment, but outside of Kentucky, who I do think is going to be improved, and outside of maybe Texas, because I think Sean Miller is just a way better coach than Rodney Terry, who are the teams in the SEC that are going to be definitively better next year than they were this year? I don't think Auburn's going to be better. They're going to be good. I don't think they're going to be better. I think Florida's going to be good. I don't think they're going to be better. I don't think whoever, Tennessee, Mississippi State, you go on and on. Missouri, I love Dennis Gates. I don't think they're going to be better. So this is an exciting time for Arkansas. The last thing I'll say is I don't think they're done. One, we'll wait on official news for Carter Knox. That probably won't come out for another probably 3 to 4 weeks. NBA draft process is going to go into mid-May. We'll cover it. We'll monitor it. And it'll be interesting if for some reason Carter Knox does decide to stay in the draft. We'll obviously figure out, is there a plan B behind him? Because I don't know that you'll be able to get that caliber of player that late in the spring. But again, I expect him to probably return to college after this draft process, because he is a guy that I don't see being a top 15, top 20 pick and getting the kind of guaranteed money that he should be expecting, and the kind of guaranteed money that should convince him to leave Arkansas next year when he's going to be a very well compensated player in the college game. But 2, I don't think they're done, and it'll be interesting to see. I think they still feel like they want to go get one more scorer on the perimeter, a guy that doesn't need to handle the ball. So could that be PJ Haggerty if the point guard demands go away? We'll talk about PJ Haggerty in a minute. Jameer Watkins from Florida State is a name that is very popular. Then I'll say this, there's conflicting reports on if Chad Baker-Mazara would actually be a factor at Arkansas. I saw Jeff Goodman say he would be. I saw some Arkansas reporters say probably not. But I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure all the comments agree with me, all those lovely Kentucky fans agree. I think this is the best team in the SEC going into next year. We got a long way to go to get to November and December, but I cannot wait until the games are played. And by the way, we'll find out how good Arkansas is early. We know Coach Cal will put together an interesting out-of-conference schedule, and we already know Thanksgiving Day, Duke, Arkansas in Chicago. That's probably going to be a top 10 matchup. At least it will be a preseason top 10 matchup on paper. So a lot to be excited about. But this team right now is, in my opinion, the best team in the SEC. Tell you what, so we knew coming into these, really the last couple days, the next couple days, it was going to be a busy time, believe it or not, on the college basketball calendar, because with the NBA draft combine done, we're starting to get some clarification on who is coming back to the sport and who isn't, kind of those classic stay or go decisions. Bring it up, we've been through all the names over the last couple days, really the last couple weeks, but there was one player that, frankly, I don't think we talked about enough in terms of an important, significant stay or go decision. That player is Carter Knox, forward, played at Arkansas last year as a freshman. Stats won't blow you away, and we're going to explain why in a second. But over the last probably dozen games of the season, Carter Knox was, frankly, one of the best players in the SEC. Bring it up because he put his name in the draft right around the deadline to enter, which was mid-April, and went through the process, was at the combine, had a good but probably not great week. And so since then, we've been kind of on Carter Knox watch. Could he actually return? What would it mean for Arkansas, etc.? Well, I bring it up because just moments ago, the piece of news that every Arkansas fan was waiting for became official as Carter Knox, 6'6" sophomore, soon to be sophomore, officially announces he is coming back to Arkansas for his sophomore year. This is huge. This is big in the SEC title picture, the national title picture. Yes, I believe that. And with it, I got just two things to say. One, yes, I believe Arkansas is the favorite going into next year in the SEC. The SEC favorites, a legitimate top 10 team nationally. And because of it, with the return of Carter Knox, I just got one question for you, baby. Can anything stop the Big Pig invasion? Can anything? I don't know if anything can next year. Big Pig invasion. Arkansas, I believe, will be the number one team in the SEC. Let's break it down. Let's discuss. By the way, if you like the shirt, you can get it at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. Should mention, by the way, we're stuck on back orders. We should get them out this week for those of you who have already ordered. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into this decision because, first of all, I already know what's going to come. I can predict what the comments are going to say before I even hit publish on this video, okay? The comments, they're going to be so obvious. Oh, Torres, you're just gassing up this kid because he plays for Calipari and you blah, 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 blah. We already know what people are going to say. And here's what I would say. If you don't think this is important, I'm not saying it's the most important decision at the NBA draft deadline, but it's in the short conversation. And if you believe I'm just doing this to gas somebody up, I hate to say it, casual, non-ball knower, sorry, not sorry, it's the truth. Because here is the thing about Carter Knox. If you actually pay attention, if you actually watch the games, if you're smart and listen to this show, which you should be doing, you would know that, as I said, over the last probably month of the season, Carter Knox was not only one of the best freshmen in all of college basketball, he was actually one of the best players in the SEC. So remember, this year, the SEC was the toughest conference in college basketball, okay? Bar none, maybe the best conference ever. What was it? What did it end up being? 14 NCAA tournament teams? I can't even remember. I think it was 14 NCAA tournament teams, okay? And so listen, if you look at Carter Knox's stats, 8.5 points per game, it doesn't blow you away. You're not thinking that, oh, this guy is whatever. Well, again, in the toughest conference ever, here is what he did over the final month of the season. From February 15th on, so basically after Valentine's Day, he is a kid that averaged close to 12 points per game, which doesn't set the world on fire. But remember, a freshman in the toughest conference in college basketball. And then keep in mind this, over Arkansas's final 4 games. So keep in mind, we are talking about a situation where they are playing Ole Miss in the SEC tournament, which was a Sweet 16 team, playing Kansas, preseason number 1 team in the country, playing St. John's, Big East regular season champ, Big East tournament champ, and also playing Texas Tech in the Sweet 16. Carter Knox averaged 15 points per game, about 5 rebounds per game, 20 points in that loss to Texas Tech, 14 against Ole Miss in the SEC tournament. Like I said, one of the youngest players in the SEC, played as well as anybody, especially late, and that is why I am so excited for what he could potentially bring to the season ahead. Beyond that, I think it's important to know, I think, first of all, just simple math will tell you, I think a second year in college basketball, he is going to elevate his game, just more comfortable, more whatever. But here's the other thing. It's not like he's coming back alone, right? And this is the reason I've been so excited about Arkansas. Frankly, I hate to say this because this is going to sound almost negative, but since the day their season ended, I remember you lose to Texas Tech in the Sweet 16. Sorry to open up old wounds. But I remember doing a segment the next day that was like, if you actually look at who could potentially be back, this team should be better in 25, 26 than they were in 2024, 2025. And so fast forward, basically everything I said in that video, the day the season ended, has come true. You look at who could potentially come back. Now, listen, obviously you're going to lose Nelly Davis. You're going to lose Jonas Adu, okay? Big Z leaves, but frankly, I don't even know if it was a mutual decision. I don't think he was somebody that the staff particularly wanted back. No disrespect. Great player. I think he'll be good at Illinois. But there were 4 players that could come back, and I think all of them had, I know all of them had options if they wanted to look other places. Instead, they're all coming back. Now, we've talked about all these guys. I am not going to spend too much time breaking down their games because we have plenty of time. But again, we're talking about a group that includes DJ Wagner. I know everyone's got DJ Wagner takes, but here's the bottom line. 11.5 points, almost 4 assists per game. And again, a player who played much better late. Look at the biggest games of the season, 24 points in that SEC, basically it clinched an NCAA tournament berth, final game of the regular season. 13-6 in the SEC tournament against South Carolina. 14-6 and 2 steals against Kansas in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. So another player that played his best basketball late. And I believe, listen, veteran point guard in the SEC. You cannot undersell the value of that. Beyond him, Trevin Brazil. I think he was maybe the X factor with the entire season kind of getting on track in late February into March. Was great down the stretch. We've talked about it. 11-12 in the opening round of the NCAA tournament against Kansas. Outside of that game, how about the fact that he had 15-11 in the SEC tournament against Ole Miss? He had 8-8 in a game against St. John's in which he was in foul trouble. Played his best basketball late in the season, and then Billy Richmond, worth noting, played his best basketball too, including being the leading scorer against St. John's. So don't tell me they don't bring back anybody. They bring back 4 key pieces of a team that got to the Sweet 16. They add 2 more pieces out of the portal, Nick Pringle, Malik Ewan. Again, everyone's going to say, oh, how good are those guys? You don't need them to be stars. You need them to play very specific roles on this team in the front court, big and physical. That's exactly what they're going to provide. And then the freshman class, 2 McDonald's All-Americans, Malik Thomas and Darius Acuff. I think when it's all said and done, Darius Acuff might be the best player on the team when it's all said and done, but I think Carter Knox is in that conversation. And then also, I think 2 important freshmen from a role player perspective. Kareem Rattal, I don't think I did a good enough job explaining his value the other day when we talk about some of Coach Cal's comments from his road show over the last couple of days. We'll talk about those in a minute. And then Isaiah Sealy, the kind of kid from the state, going to play a role. It might not be huge. That's 10 dudes you can go to war with every single night. And so with it, you factor in, and I think this is the important part because everyone tells me, oh, Torres, how good is this guy? How good is that guy? Well, you also have to factor in who everybody else is returning and who everybody else isn't. And so look across the SEC. Auburn lost basically everybody. Now, listen, obviously with them, they did a great job in the portal, headlined by Keyshawn Murphy from Mississippi State, Keyshawn Hall from UCF, but they are replacing a ton of production. Alabama's replacing a ton of production. Florida, yes, they've been successful in the portal, replacing a ton of production. Tennessee replacing a ton of production. Ole Miss replacing basically everybody. And so, yeah, there are teams that are returning key players, most notably Kentucky, but the depth of talent and the depth of returning experience in this league just isn't what it was a year ago. And so, again, everyone wants to sit there and say, oh, Torres, you're overhyping Arkansas. Well, tell me who's definitively better on paper. I don't see very many teams. And again, listen, I'm not saying that I'm right. What I am saying is I look at rosters all day, every day this time of year. And what you can't tell me is there's very many teams that return more experience in the SEC than Arkansas. As a matter of fact, there frankly just flat out aren't any. And so you factor it all in. I like this team. I think the most interesting thing, and this is something we discussed a few days back on the Air Torres pod, is Coach Cal done? Now, he said on his road show the other day, he said, look, we're not trying to really add big pieces. Sometimes less is more. And, this was before Carter Knox came back, but he insinuated if Carter Knox comes back, we're largely done. Have kind of poked around on this. Obviously, first of all, there aren't a ton of big names left. So I think that's the first key thing to note. It's not like there's, 30 guys left in the portal that can change your season. I think the only one that really stands out to me as a player that could be realistic at Arkansas is Jameer Watkins. He, of course, is the forward. He's a wing. I think he's listed as a guard, but he's 6'7", forward, whatever. Played at Florida State the last 2 years. Really talented player. I don't know how much of this is on him, but hasn't really contributed to much winning. But the counter to that is he also averaged 18.5 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, shot 32% this year from three, but has shot 34% the previous 2 years. I think he's the only one that I could really see Arkansas that's kind of a marquee guy really making a strong push for, kind of adds more scoring on the wing. You have plenty in the backcourt with Wagner, Acuff, and Malik Thomas. I said the other day I wouldn't mind them adding just a veteran guard that's comfortable playing 8 minutes a game once you get to SEC play, just to have an extra ball handler if something, God forbid, happens to DJ Wagner, he gets in foul trouble, whatever. But outside of that, I think they're largely set in the backcourt. And I think, listen, there's conversations about, do you add one more body in the front court? But again, I think you have the two transfers. You have Trevin Brazil and you have Kareem Rattal. I don't know how much more you really need there if you believe Kareem Rattal is a guy that can at least play some minutes for you throughout the season. So really the wing is the only spot that, in my opinion, you could even think about adding anybody. Jameer Watkins would be the name there. Now, the thing with him, going to be very coveted with whatever he decides. And so that's a kid that, North Carolina desperately needs another guy. Jameer Watkins, you would think would be, I know, is at the top of their list if he comes back. Now, North Carolina hasn't been great in the portal, but whatever. North Carolina would need a guy. Duke, I think there's a possibility Duke needs another guy. And so Jameer Watkins is a guy that I think, realistically, I think Arkansas would like. But one thing with Cal, it's funny, right? In this portal era, the thing that I've kind of found interesting, he's not afraid to move off of a guy if the money just gets crazy. If he just says, look, we like you, but not at that number. We're going to go in a different direction. And I think the Jameer Watkins bidding could get interesting. Outside of that, we'll see if he adds, I don't think it would be anybody of note because you already have 10, but could you add an 11th guy that's strictly a three-point shooter, an 11th guy who's strictly a rim protector, an 11th guy who's strictly a ball handler? I think it's possible. But what I will say is with Carter Knox back, I'm sorry, I really like this team. I just do. And I think they have a chance to be really, really, really special. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure you're subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. I promised you. Excuse me, I was about to cough. In the college football season, I promised you, in the college basketball season, I said, look, we're not the kind of show that stops doing content just because the season's over. And in many ways, April and May have become as busy as February and March, if not more busy. So make sure you're subscribed. We'll start kind of transitioning to college football over the next couple weeks and next couple months. But right now, we're full speed ahead until these rosters get finalized. Make sure you're listening on the Aaron Torres Pod, Apple, Spotify. And oh, by the way, never forget that Big Pig Invasion tee is available at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. Talk the Razorbacks because, I keep saying it's late June. Most rosters are set. We've started our college hoops offseason grades. If you've missed any of them, Louisville, UConn, Florida, Kentucky, North Carolina are coming up. BYU's coming up. But I've been hesitant to do anything on Arkansas because it feels like they were going to add one more player at some point, okay? It's been an interesting conversation in Arkansas circles. They basically have, in my opinion, prior to Thursday, I think about 10 dudes that you can go to war with. Now, you don't want all of them playing 38 minutes a game, but they got 10 guys that you can count on. But it felt like almost universally that every Arkansas fan was kind of sitting there saying, we need at least one more piece. And it's felt like that Arkansas fans felt like they needed a body in the front court. Remember last year, they basically had Big Z, Jonas Adu, Jonas Adu, and Trevin Brazil. Now, Adu Thero was kind of a 3-4, whatever. But when the team dealt with injuries, all of a sudden you're rail thin in the front court. Jonas Adu's hurt early. You don't have enough bodies. Trevin Brazil gets hurt early. You don't have enough bodies. Then those guys come back. Adu Thero gets hurt. And then obviously in SEC tournament play, Big Z gets hurt. And all of a sudden you're just down to basically no bodies. So I bring it up because it felt like Arkansas was going to add a body. It felt like it was going to come from the European ranks. And it's interesting because if you follow this on a day in, day out basis, it felt like the name that everybody was monitoring was a Russian big man named Igor Razov, okay? Well, Igor Razov may still come. Maybe by the time that you listen to this, he will be committed. But on Thursday, Arkansas did get a European big man, but it wasn't the big man that we thought. That is because 7-foot center from Bosnia, Elmir Dvacic. Look at producer Matt. I didn't even know there was a picture of him on the internet. I didn't know anything about him until 24 hours ago. But Elmir Dvacic commits to Arkansas, 7-foot center from Bosnia. Maybe the final piece. I'm excited. I liked Arkansas's roster without him. I liked him. I like it even more now. And what the heck? It's mid-June. Why wouldn't we do it? Arkansas is playing in Omaha this week, so I just got one question for you. Can anything stop the Big Pig invasion? Elmir Dvacic, can anything stop the Bosnian Big Pig invasion? That's right. Get your t-shirt, eratorresonline.com/merchandise. We're having a little fun. It's June. I drank too much coffee. I also, by the way, unrelated to anything, burned myself with the iron today. So this is like my MJ flu game right now. I'm all over the place. But when you're talking Bosnian big men in June, we're just flying by the seat of our pants right now. Okay, Elmir. Let's talk about Elmir, okay? First of all, let me say this because I got into a little brouhaha on social media. So Elmir Dvacic is coming over from Bosnia. He plays in the Adriatic League. And so I put out a pretty harmless tweet when he committed. I said, I think he's a nice addition, front court depth, blah, 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 this and that. And you know what happened from there? Immediately, a certain fan base that wasn't Arkansas's got in the mentions and said, Torres, he averaged 2 points per game. Stop kissing John Calipari's you know what. Well, listen, couple things here. And I said it, and I made some people mad when I said it. But first of all, context matters here, okay? 18-year-old big man playing in a professional league, the Adriatic League, overseas, okay? It has professionals from America. By the way, a lot of these really good European players that are coming overseas to the U.S., older, 21, 22, 23. Luka Bogovic, who's coming over to play for UNC, 22 years old. The kid going to Illinois, Mihailo Petrovic maybe, 21, 22 years old. So this kid is younger, and he only averaged 2 points a game. I get it, but he's playing in a league with grown men, okay? By the way, and I said this on social media, and everybody gets mad at me. I like Brandon Garrison from Kentucky, but he averaged 5 points per game. Doesn't mean he can't make a leap next year. Kentucky fans are telling me he might be the best big man in the SEC, and I'm not even arguing with them. I like Brandon Garrison, but the point I'm trying to make is guys get better year over year. Context matters, and he was playing in one of the toughest leagues in Europe last season. Oh, by the way, when he played for his national team in the U18 championships a few summers ago, 14 points, 10 rebounds per game, okay? But I think more than it, so when he plays against his contemporaries, when he plays against his peers, he's very good. But the important part is this. Nobody is saying that he was the piece that you needed to go from not even making the tournament to top 10 team. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the one thing Arkansas really needed, I believe more than anything else, was a backup 4-5 man, some bulk, a body that they can use. And this is maybe possibly the final piece. And it's not about you had to go get the best player in the world. You had to go get another big man for practices, for depth. It's worth noting he has multiple years of eligibility, we suspect. So this is a guy that could be on the roster for 2, 3, 4 years. So no, one thing I will not do, I'm not going to oversell it and say that he's the most important commitment that has ever happened in the history of college basketball. But what I am saying is he is an important commitment for this particular Arkansas team. Because I'll be real, I like this Arkansas team, and I ain't afraid to admit it, okay? I know that every time I say something, whatever. Arkansas made the Sweet 16 last year, but beyond that, I really like the pieces on this team, and I've said that since Carter Knox announced his return right at the NBA draft deadline. First of all, you got 4 guys that are coming back. You can't go solely off last year's stats again. But at the end of the year, the 4 players coming back were 4 of the most important players at Arkansas, and they were all playing at a really high level. We've gone over this. DJ Wagner, he was one of the best guards in the SEC over the last month of the season. That's not my opinion. That is a statistical fact. This was a guy that had 24 points against Mississippi State in a game that basically clinched their NCAA tournament berth in the final day of the regular season. He was great in the opener against Kansas in the NCAA. I mean, he was very good down the stretch for that team. 3rd-year junior in the SEC. Yeah, I'm going to bet on that guy. Beyond DJ Wagner, Carter Knox. Again, if you just look at the totality of the stats over the course of the season, he doesn't look like a guy that's, primed to be an all-SEC first-team guy, which I think is what he's going to be. But he had 20 against St. John's or 20 against Texas Tech in the Sweet 16, 15 against St. John's. If you can do that against those teams, you are due for a breakout this coming year. Billy Richmond was the leading scorer for Arkansas against St. John's in the round of 32. Trevin Brazil, double-double in the opening round of the NCAA tournament against Kansas. So 4 key players coming back. By the way, it's kind of interesting. I believe Arkansas statistically has the most returning production of anybody in the SEC returning this year, which is crazy. I call John Calipari Mr. Retention because that's never something you could say about him before, but it is something you could say about him now. So I like those 4 pieces. I like the 4 other freshman-ish first-year college basketball players coming in outside of Elmir Zvacic because Darius Acuff is a dog. Okay, Darius Acuff, I believe, probably the front runner for SEC for SEC freshman. Let me correct that. SEC freshman of the year. Nate Ament's going to be in the mix. Maybe a Jasper Johnson, maybe a Malachi Moreno. I'm trying to think of who the other guys are. Darius Acuff's a beast. Okay, he is a dog, and I think he's going to be really good. I think there's some guys, maybe aren't built to dominate in college basketball right away. I think he's going to be great. I think Malik Thomas is going to be great. By the way, if you've seen any of the stuff Arkansas social media team has put out, Malik Thomas looks like he's grown a little bit since, kind of the start of his senior year of high school. You add Isaiah Seeley, who I think is going to be pretty good. Kareem Rattal as well, another overseas player. Now you add Zvacic. Should mention, by the way, make sure you're following our Torres on the Hogs account, Torres on the Hogs, for all your late-breaking Arkansas news. And then on top of the 4 returnees, the now 5 newcomers, you also have 2 transfers, Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle, both big guys. And I thought it was interesting. I don't know if we talked about this, but Calipari talked about this at one point during kind of those media availabilities that he had kind of during that spring tour in May. He basically said point blank, he was like, it feels like his recruiting philosophy is now we're going to go with the high upside players, NBA prospects on the wings and the guard spots. And then down low, we're getting grown men. We're getting grown men who can throw people around. It was Jonas Adu last year. This year, it's Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle. And you look at this team, I think there's a lot of reason for excitement. Now, listen, it's not to say that the team is perfect. I would say 3-point shooting will not be a strength, okay? I don't think, by the way, it's going to be as big of a weakness as people think. End of the year, Trevin Brazil was shooting it well. Carter Knox was shooting it well. DJ Wagner was actually shooting it better than people realize. I think Acuff can be a pretty good 3-point shooter. But also, there's a couple variables. One, you don't have to be a great 3-point shooting team if you're a great offensive rebounding team. And that was, if you remember, because I remember talking about this, everybody last year when Arkansas struggled out of the gate, everyone was so caught up on their shooting. Oh, they don't have enough shooting. I said, part of the problem with having bad shooting, you also can't be a bad rebounding team. There are teams like, look at Buzz Williams at Texas A&M. Now, I hate the way he plays. I think it's football on hardwood, and it's awful. I don't think Arkansas or Calipari's teams have ever been that unwatchable. But you don't have to be a great 3-point shooting team if you're a great rebounding team, and Arkansas just wasn't last year. I think they will be this year. And then beyond that, again, you have 4 or 5 guys that can get to the rim, make plays anytime they want, and Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas and DJ Wagner and Carter Knox and Billy Richmond, etc. So to me, again, we're not going to oversell Elmir Zvacic as the biggest commitment in the history of basketball. But you look at this team now, and yes, you'd like a little bit more 3-point shooting, but you now have 11 dudes you can go to war with. You have, again, I think 3 guards that are really, really, really good. You have 2 wings that I believe will play in the NBA, certainly Carter Knox, maybe Billy Richmond. And then down low, how did Arkansas' season end? They couldn't get an offensive rebound against Texas Tech. That ain't going to happen with Malik Ewan. That ain't going to happen with Nick Pringle. And now you just have another body. And so when I said I think it's maybe the final piece, now we'll see. We'll talk about that in half a second. But when I said this is the final big piece, it's just another body. You need depth. You need physicality in this league. Listen, I hate to say it. This isn't football, but injuries are going to happen, okay? And so because of it, you need bodies. And this kid provides a body, depth. By the way, great for practicing. I remember we had Will Wade on during, the season with McNeese, and he was talking about, no, everyone's afraid to recruit 12, 13 guys now because of this, guys are going to transfer, whatever. But he's like, you need those bodies for practice, to have competitive practices. Well, say what you want about our boy Elmir Zvacic, the Bosnian Big Pig invasion, but that is a guy that is going to, at minimum, going to contribute at practice and be a guy that makes Malik Ewan better, makes Nick Pringle better. I remember, I'll give you an example. When Reed Potter, the 7'1" kid committed to Kentucky, comes from Miami of Ohio. Again, 10th, 11th, 12th man, but he's going to make Jaden Quaintance better. He's going to make Brandon Garrison better. And it's the same with Elmir Zvacic. So I like it. What I'll be most interested to see, is he the final piece? I've heard mixed things about whether they're still going after Igor Razov. That is something that we should find out in the coming days. Igor Razov plays in Russia. His season is officially done. So to me, the big question becomes, is this the final piece? I would tend to think, I don't know if you need another big guy. Again, Calipari was very vocal about last year not wanting to over-recruit, bury guys on the bench and have them transfer. I think he wants to have a roster where he has his guys, he has the backups, he can run practices, but he's nimble enough where he's not so backloaded where he's going to have 4 or 5 guys transfer out. But again, Elmir Zvacic commits to Arkansas. I think it's a solid pickup. And I'll say this, I've said it consistently. I believe Arkansas is right in the mix in the SEC title race. Kentucky, Arkansas, Florida, to me, are the clear top 3. I think Auburn is going to be there by the end. I think Tennessee's always good under Rick Barnes. But you look at this Arkansas team, they're not a great 3-point shooting team, but everybody's got weaknesses. Kentucky's not a great 3-point shooting team. Auburn's got an entirely new roster. Florida, again, Boogie Fland, he's got to prove it. So the point I'm trying to make is I think Arkansas is a contender. I think they're a contender for an SEC title. By the way, don't tell me, Cal's teams never compete for the. He finished second 2 years ago in his last year at Kentucky. Elmir Zvacic, that's your Elmir Zvacic take. I'm excited. The Bosnian Big Pig invasion is coming to Fayetteville. Is Arkansas done? Is their roster complete? I put out a tweet at the time after Zvacic committed. We talked about it on the show, and I said, I think this is the final piece of the Arkansas Razorbacks roster. Well, I had both fans and media members tell me, Torres, you may want to keep that little eye out because there could be more good news coming. Well, tell you what, was in the car about 15 minutes ago when the news comes across my feed that, how about this, 2025 4-star Paulo Semado, he's originally from Angola, played high school ball here last year. How about this? The kids on Instagram, they call him African Wemby. I'm not making this up. African Wemby, Paul Semado, originally from Angola, played in Florida. Well, just moments ago, he committed to the Arkansas Razorbacks, baby. And with that, you already know, I just got one question for you. Can anything stop the Big Pig invasion? We had the Bosnian Big Pig invasion just the other day. Now the Angolan Big Pig invasion is coming to Fayetteville. Let's talk about Paulo Semado, because I'll tell you this. Listen, we said it with Elmir. We're not going to try to overhype. We're not going to say this is the biggest commitment in the history of the program. But at the same time, it goes back to what I continue to say. in this new era with 15 scholarships, it's about roster building, it's about allocation, it's about finding the right pieces in the right spots. And I love this roster that John Calipari has put together with, as I said, Paulo Samado, the most recent commitment just moments ago. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into this. Couple things. First of all, just, one thing about me, you can like me, you can hate me. I'm never wrong. I'm never afraid to acknowledge when I just got to take an L. And I got to take an L on this one because I remember when Knox ended up announcing he was coming back to play college basketball this year. I said, I kind of felt like the roster maybe was set. I said, you got 10 guys that you can go to war with. Obviously, the 4 returnees, DJ Wagner, Billy Richmond, Carter Knox, and Trevin Brazil. You had, of course, on top of it, the 2 transfers, Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle. You had, after that, the 4 guys that are freshman-ish, right? So Malik Thomas, Darius Acuff, Isaiah Sealy, and Kareem Rattal. So we're talking about right now, that's 10 players that you could go to war with. Now, it felt like maybe you add another big body. You don't want to come up short, especially late in the season. Injuries happen. We saw what happened last year. So they add Zvacic. But I'll tell you this. I actually, in some ways, like the addition more of Paulo Samado. Now, listen, again, we talked about Zvacic yesterday. I think it's just so important. Listen, when I said good things about him, you already know what happened. A certain fan base where John Calipari used to coach, oh, Torres, you're totally gassing this guy up. No, I'm not. Because at the end of the day, Elmir Zvacic, and it's the same with Paulo Samado, it's not their job to come in and be the star for this team, to be the best player. But can they play a very limited role? Can they develop? And most importantly, 2 things. Can they provide depth in case of injury? And can they be great practice players? I absolutely believe they can. And so I love both commitments, but let's get further into Paulo Samado, okay? So basically, listen, by now you've all watched the highlights. Like I said, top 50 player, class of 2025, so he will be enrolling this coming year. 7'1", can handle the ball. And I'll say this, we've all seen, the 7-foot kid that maybe doesn't really have the coordination and he's kind of more of a defense, energy, whatever. This kid feels like he can handle a little bit. He can shoot a little bit. He can do a little bit of everything, okay? You know what he actually reminds me of in a lot of ways? You know the player he reminds me of? He actually reminds me of Trevin Brazil, currently at Arkansas. Trevin Brazil's like 6'10", 6'11", but he's coordinated. He runs the floor. He rebounds the crap out of the ball. He blocks shots. He's great at the rim. He's added weight in his now 3 years at Arkansas going into year 4. And that's kind of who I think Paulo Samado is going to be, if he trusts the process and stays in the program. Again, we're not saying that he is going to be the best player on this team. And if he doesn't average 20, he's going to average 20 and he's going to be SEC Player of the Year. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, can he come in? Can he develop? Because if he continues to develop, if he's on the trajectory, I could see him being a very important piece this year and then potentially taking over for Trevin Brazil next year. Because remember, the whole front court is basically graduating after this year. Nick Pringle, Malik Ewan, and Trevin Brazil, I believe, and if I'm wrong, Arkansas fans correct me, are all out of eligibility after this season. I think beyond that, though, so there's 2 things that I think that Paulo Samado and also, and we talked about this with Elmir Zvacic yesterday, is that I think there are 2 things they can provide. One is obviously depth in case of injury, okay? And we saw it, unfortunately, there was no better example of why you need just a couple extra bodies than the Arkansas Razorbacks last year. Listen to it, I didn't hate the idea of really putting all your eggs with 9 players at this time last year with Arkansas. So they went with the 9 players that they had: Big Z, Jonas Adu, Trevin Brazil, Adu Thero, who else? DJ Wagner, Billy Ray. You know who the players were, but they had 9. But you also see the high risk, high reward that comes with that. When it all clicks, you got 9 great players and everybody knows their role. But when an injury happened, when a twisted ankle happened, when Big Z hurts his thumb in the SEC tournament, all of a sudden you just put yourself at risk of so much, where SEC tournament, NCAA tournament, you're just rotating bodies to try to keep everybody out of foul trouble. And so I believe that both Vacic, but also Paulo Samado can provide the two things that I think are really important in their role. One, it is a body to have in case of injury. And listen, nobody roots for injury. Nobody wants injury. But the counter to that is injury does happen. You go back to Arkansas last year. Jonas Adu was out to start the year. Big Z had Trevin Brazil got hurt early in the season. What was it? An ankle? It was something. It was this. It was that. But both those guys are out. Big Z's having to play all kinds of crazy minutes. Then later in the year, Boogie Flan gets hurt. You're down a guard. Then Adu Thero gets hurt. You're down a wingish big guy. Then, oh, by the way, as I mentioned, Jonas Adu's healthy, but Big Z hurts his thumb, and you're just trying to survive in the NCAA tournament. You're playing guys that you never thought you'd have to, certainly in the roles that you thought you had to play in. So one, Apollo Samado, a Elmir Vacic, guys like that, and Isaiah Celia, Kareem Ratali, those are the guys that you don't want to have to play 30 minutes, but you might have to play them 18 here, 12 there, 0 there sometimes. So that's important. To me, beyond that, here's the other thing. What I think is also important is competitive depth for practice. Okay, Cal talked about this during the season. He talked about, man, we can't even run a full 5-on-5. Well, guess what? That excuse is, I'm not saying it's an excuse, but that conversation is kind of out of the window now. And I'll say this, I think that kind of depth is important. I'll say this, I think it's actually been very interesting watching all of these programs, knowing with the House settlement that they'll get 15 scholarships and how they've used them. A lot of programs have really used those scholarship 12, 13, 14, maybe 15 to really just add back end to bench guys, either developmental freshmen, redshirt freshmen, younger guys. By the way, there's a chance Paulo Samalo even redshirts. I know that Cal has talked about bringing in a guy to redshirt. But at the same time, it's been interesting to see all these programs use those late scholarships to go with guys that might redshirt, freshmen that might not play, or the opposite. A veteran dude that's just going to be happy to be along for the ride. My UConn Huskies, they added 2 mid-major transfers very late in the spring. They got all their key guys back. This guy's coming back. That guy's coming back. They added a transfer from IU Indy. They added a transfer from Lemoyne to basically say, hey, come here. You're going to have a chance to compete for everything. But what we really need you for is practice, competitive depth. You may get a shot here or there, but we need you to come here, put on the uniform, represent it well, and compete like hell in practice. And if you're good enough, you'll play. By the way, Kentucky, because of course Kentucky fans had a lot to say when I said nice things about Elmir Vacic, but I said the same thing when they added Reed Potter a few weeks ago, when they added Braden Hawthorne a few weeks ago. Those are great dudes if you're not counting on them for 31 minutes a night. And so it's the same with Paulo Samado. It's the same with Elmir Vacic. I think they can be great practice players, tough as hell, get Malik Ewan ready for games, get Trevin Brazil ready for games, get whoever, Nick Pringle ready for games, whatever. You hope you don't have to play them. Again, you may even redshirt one of them, but they're great players to have in the program, and they're great pieces, and they certainly got high upside because, again, I'd be lying if I said I was familiar with African Wemby, Paulo Samado, or at least with that nickname. I had obviously heard the name, but wasn't necessarily familiar with the nickname of African Wemby. But it shows you what kind of upside he has. And no, I don't expect him to be a Wembanyama, but it is an interesting piece of news. So Arkansas gets another guy. They add a piece. Tell you what, man, this Big Pig Invasion is coming. Get your t-shirt, AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise.